Hi everyone. So I hope you had a good time this morning in all the sessions, and I just want to welcome you guys to our provocation session now. So we're going to have a talk by Zuhaib Shaikh, which is titled "We Are All Illiterate," which should be really interesting. It's about the link between current education and the future, and the possible sort of disconnection between those. So Zuhaib, if you'd like to turn your camera and mic on now and join me on the stage, and I'll let you begin with your talk. Awesome. Hi. All right.
Hi.
Great. So I will leave you to it, and I'll rejoin you at the Q&A at the end there. Great. Cheers.
Right. Thank you, Toby. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. The Festival for Change is something that sounds really exciting, and I'm excited to be a part of it. What I'm going to talk to you about today, the sources of this actually started some 5 years ago when I had a choice to make with regards to which school should I put my daughter in. She was someone who was extremely creative in the first 3 and 4 years that I knew her. She was into arts, she was into crafts, and she was just full of ideas and questions. And when I went out there to really understand what sort of school I put her in, and the kind of curricula that I ran into, and the kind of school systems I ran into, this question popped into my head. I started wondering, this is a young girl who will enter the first grade of her education in a couple of years. And yet, I have no idea what world she will step into 10, 12, 15 years from now. And so that's where I started really searching for information in regards to how education and economy and jobs in the future are evolving, are changing, and what is it that our kids really need right now to really be a workforce in the future which contributes to the economy, the world, and their communities. And that has led me in the last 5 years. I've been working in education. I've been working with an organization that provides quality education in the less privileged areas, the Citizens Foundation. And a number of questions have popped up, which have led to only more questions, not a lot of answers. And so that's what the provocation today is about. Um, and so I think I'll start with asking this question. If you have a sibling, if you have a daughter, a son, if you have a younger brother, a cousin who will step into grade one this year, what sort of a world with regards to economic prospects, with regards to um, the job prospects, are they really getting into? Um, and and if you think about it for a moment, but there have been studies done. There have been studies done, and one study says that 65% of primary school children today will end up working for jobs that don't exist today. And that's a huge number. This is across the world. So we are really putting our kids into schools with no idea of what jobs in the future will look like. But how have jobs evolved in recent years? So this is a snapshot of jobs that did not exist 10 years ago. And these are the most in-demand jobs today. So for instance, the iOS developer or the Android developer were not jobs that we grew up hearing about. I'm a computer science graduate myself, but I never heard of these jobs when in 2006 I graduated with a degree in computer science. It's all happened afterwards, and so even fun stuff like the Zumba instructor or social media intern, these are not jobs that existed before. These are more of such jobs. So, for instance, we hear these terms so regularly now: the cloud specialist or the fintech manager, the data scientist, the big data architect or scientist. These are unheard of terms. These were unheard of 10 years ago, but today these are the jobs that every organization now seems to be transitioning towards. Um, there's also this concern of what the education institutes, in terms of colleges and universities across the globe, are producing in terms of graduates, the skills that they have, and what are the skills required by employers out there, by the organizations out there, which is a core indicator in skill and job fit. And if you can see across the globe, there's a deficiency between what the employer wants and what the educational institutes are producing. India, for instance, there's a 32% difference in the kind of skills produced and the kind of skills provided. Where I live is close neighbor to India, Pakistan. That's where the situation is very similar. The World Economic Forum tried to estimate what sort of jobs will decline not long from now, by the year 2022, and what jobs and roles will emerge in by 2022. And you can see that about 75 million jobs are supposed to decline by 2022. Jobs like data entry clerks in accounting and administration, auditors and postal service clerks. These are jobs that are at risk of being lost. And the emerging jobs are data analysts, artificial intelligence, machine learning. There is big data scientists and specialists, the organizational development specialists, and that these are all jobs that, when we got into schools and colleges, even 10 years or 15 years from now, we had no idea about. And these demand skills that are relevant to today and are relevant to the future. And we talk about the skills. What skills are they? This is another World Economic Forum prediction in terms of what which skills were in demand in the year 2015 and how these skills are changing by year 2020. That's the year that we're in right now. So if you see, the difference is in higher order cognitive skills are taking top priority. Skills like critical thinking, creativity, judgment, decision making, cognitive flexibility are entering the fray. Whereas skills like negotiation and management, quality control, service orientation are going further down the list. This is an indicator of the kind of skills that will be required in the future so that labor markets can be filled with people and resources who provide those skills to meet the growing demands of the future. Another variable that's arrived on the horizon is the fourth industrial revolution. And with the fourth industrial revolution, we expect a lot more automation, a lot more AI, artificial intelligence, and this idea of robots taking over human jobs. What this map shows is growth of the industrial revolution. The first one was in 1784. Focus was on mechanization. The third that we're currently transitioning from was not too long ago. That's 1969, and automation and computers when they arrived. And if you see, the fourth industrial revolution has rather come real soon. The time difference between the second and third industrial revolution was about 100 years. But the fourth industrial revolution is here and now, and we have to be ready for it. But what does the fourth industrial revolution mean in terms of jobs? These are some of the jobs that are at the risk of being wiped out because they will be automated. So, telemarketers, loan officers, or cashiers, or taxi drivers, because we're entering into a time of automated vehicles, and even fast food cooks. But the safest jobs, if you notice a common trend around safest jobs, they're also with regards to human connection and cognitive ability. So mental health and substance abuse social workers, for instance, or physical physicians and surgeons, these are jobs at the least risk of being automated despite the fourth industrial revolution. And this sort of paints a picture of the future, but not really. We need a better picture of the future of what the future could look like. But what's emerging is, without doubt, that young people need newer skills to be better prepared for jobs in the future. Um, we know right now that 70% of young people who enter the workforce will be affected by automation in the future. People who enter the workforce today. And entry level jobs will be disappearing. So, anybody who starts school today will not find the right sort of entry level jobs if the gap between what education provides and what the labor markets and economy demands is on the rise. And that's a huge risk. Also, the workplaces are shifting. Um, I, for example, go into a physical office right now, work 9 to 5, um, and that's 5 days, every week for me. But with COVID-19, all of us were forced to work from homes, and that sort of opened our eyes to new possibilities. But that's an indicator of what the workplace could look like going forward from now. For instance, right now, these are some of the cultural evolutions that happen in a workplace. Right now, we do focus on engagement and happiness of people. Previously, the focus on workplace design and workplace utility was around productivity. But in the future, all of that is again changing to higher order cognitive needs and social emotional needs of people and organizations. Purpose takes central stage, meaning takes central stage, and leading to a deeper level of happiness, which leads to productivity and care in the organization. So that's how the workforce is supposed to operate. So young people in the future will enter into these organizations and will have to have skills to navigate this new environment that the workplaces will ready themselves for. Here's some job titles from the future. What could job titles from the future sound like or look like? If 10 years ago somebody told me there would be a job like an iOS developer or Android developer, I wouldn't know what that was. I would be confused. And reading these job titles right now may instill the same sort of confusion in you, which is completely all right. So, for instance, the purposeful workplace, which is far into the future, well, not that far, probably 10 years from now, you could look at some of the job titles. What does a professional rebel do? Who is a purpose agent? Who is a soft power asset evaluator? These are jobs that are unheard of, and yet we are meant in education to prepare young people for it. So what skills do we need? What skills do young people enrolled in schools, universities, and colleges need to be better prepared for the future? Then, this is a comparison of what skills will see a growth. So you could see growth in written communication, for instance. On average, the workforce spends 13 hours doing it today, whereas they'll spend 15 hours doing it in 2030. Problem solving is on the rise, critical thinking is on the rise, interpersonal skills are on the rise, advanced technology, verbal communication. Now, these are all skills that need to be actively, practically, and consciously taught, practiced in our educational institutes today so that our workforce is ready for the future. Another way to look at it, generally, when we go to schools, colleges, universities, we divide the kind of skills we learn into two categories. We say there are hard skills. So the hard skills are maths and sciences and languages. And then there are soft skills, and soft skills we just saw in the previous slide. This is a snapshot of you know how many jobs will be soft skill intensive in the future. So what this says is, in the year 2000, of all the jobs around the world, about 53% of the jobs were soft skill intensive, which means they required a presence of soft skills. In 2015, that grew to 59%. By 2030, it is estimated that 63% of all jobs will be soft skill intensive. It may mean newer soft skills added, or it may also mean that the intensity of the soft skill right now may increase, like we saw with creativity and critical thinking, for instance. Here we see which skills will decline, and again, to build on what sort of skills will grow to meet the demands of the future. And when I say the future, I talk of the year to 2030. Um, so, physical and manual skills will decline by 11%. Basic cognitive skills will decline by 14%. And higher cognitive skills, which involve creativity and critical thinking and decision making, will increase by 9%. And social emotional skills will increase, and technological skills will increase. And this is in terms of the hours worked. And we see a comparison in United States and Western Europe in all sectors. But what this points to is a decline in um, physical and manual skills and an increase in social, emotional, and cognitive skills. So, what sort of skills should the education institutes around the world focus on. And if there was one name to put to it, it would be enterprise skills. All of the skills that we've briefly seen, you could put them under this category. And again, the enterprise skills are on the rise. Presentation skills, for instance. So even if you're an engineer or a manufacturing engineer or a civil engineer, for instance, even with that technical degree or graduation or competency, the verbal skills or presentation skills are supposed to be increasing in the future. And creativity and digital literacy are on the rise. What does that mean, for instance? So the question to ask is, how would an accountant, for instance, spend their time in the future? The accountant today versus an accountant in 2030, for instance. And we could see that these are hours per week, right? And there's a decline in hours per week on maths related tasks, where there's an increase in all other enterprise skills. So interpersonal skills, for example, are up by 17 hours a week, which means there's more coordination, there's more communication, there's more fluidity in how things are done within an organization. Problem solving, for instance, is up 9 hours a week. Learning, which is a constant in the future, is up 9 hours a week, and written communication is up 10 hours a week. So we're seeing a transition not just in the type of jobs, but the nature of jobs themselves, which are evolving from within on how time will be spent and what skills are required. Similarly, how will a doctor spend their time, for instance? Uh, Currently, we imagine doctors to be constantly on the run and doing the technical stuff. But those foundation skills are supposed to decline by 2030, and they spend 9 hours a week doing that, whereas 18 hours a week now, enterprise skills take the center stage. How will they use enterprise skills to spend their time? They'll be interpreting information from others, communication, providing consultation, counseling, and caring for others. So that's how this profession is also evolving. And overall, in 2030, some skills will increase in billions of hours around the world, and some skills will decrease by billions of hours around the world. You could see critical thinking at the fray again. 3.8 billions of hours of additional critical thinking skills applied to on-job activities by year 2030. And management and organizational and teaching are reduced by that much because of automation or because of evolution of systems. So, which skills then would the workforce need for the future? And if we divide the enterprise skills into two categories, there are higher cognitive skills, which involve creativity, entrepreneurship, innovation, critical thinking, and what we call social emotional skills. How do you relate to others? How do you practice emotional intelligence? Um, how to navigate social influence and how to be a social influencer, and service orientation and leadership. These are the sort of skills that take center stage, and all the technical skills sort of take the back end stage, because we have no idea of the kind of technical skills required for the future. But if we have these higher cognitive skills and social emotional skills in place, and if a student is a lifelong learner, the underlying theory is they will take care of the technical skills as well, which are required for any job that you do. And so, at this point, it is also important to understand how educators think about it. At the World Innovation Summit, a survey was carried out with a number of educators about what schools could look like in 2030, and some interesting results came up. So, for example, 75% of the respondents thought that personal skills will be fundamental. Personal skills are a core category in enterprise skills. There's a shift in the role of teachers, and I'll come to that in a minute. But it's interesting to see that 43% of respondents, for example, ranked online content as the most important source of knowledge. So if you think of the core variables of a school, the variables assume that the curriculum and teaching will come necessarily from the school, but how the world is evolving is with online content being available everywhere. The idea is, can we challenge this assumption? Can we challenge the assumption that curriculum and teaching can only come from a school system? And if it doesn't, what then are schools supposed to do? And so, for example, 90% of the respondents, when they say that continuing education throughout the personal or professional life will become the norm, that's the sort of direction that schools of the future or institutes of the future could take. So, for instance, when I graduated with a degree in computer science in 2006, um, I had a few skills, but to be honest, they're obsolete today. When I graduated, I could develop a web page, I could develop desktop software, but I still have no idea because I had transitioned into education. I still have no idea on how iOS develop iOS development happens or Android development happens. These are skills that graduates of today learn. But if I were to get on board, I'll have to learn those skills. There's a lot happening with virtual reality. There's a lot happening with augmented reality, and until and unless I keep learning these technical skills and exploring these new media, I will be left behind. And this is true of the future as well. I have no idea the kind of evolution that we'll be facing 5 years from now. And so, what's necessary for a student of today is to have this understanding that we'll have to become lifelong learners because things are shifting really fast. And so, schools have to be spaces which adapt to this kind of this kind of need, so that we close the gap between what's required out there in the job markets, in the labor markets, and what schools, universities, and colleges are producing.